Hello. Hi, everybody. We're from SiyonaTech. I'm Sharon, Phillips, and this is Laura Hanmer. So we're here today to talk to you about harnessing the power of emerging technologies and bridging that learning-doing gap. So we're looking at how we can enrich formal learning that's already taken place and how we can help people at point of need. So we've got some case studies we'd like to share with you as we go through today, and that we've used these technologies on, and where we've taken emerging technologies and applied them to performance support with people working on the job. So, okay, so just before we start, I thought we'd ask, do any of you remember what you learned last Monday? Okay, so make it a little bit easier. Do you remember what you wore last Monday? I mean, I can't. And unless I'd got married or something and it was a special day, then it's not really going to stick for me. And it's interesting because research shows that people forget almost 70% of what they've learned within 48 hours of training. So that's quite a frightening statistic, considering the amount of money, investment, time that we spend on learning. So you'll all know 70-20-10 model, and so we've got the formal training where we tend to centre most of our efforts. We've got coaching and mentoring, so social learning, peer-to-peer, collaboration, and we've also got the huge part, which is the 70% of learning when you're actually working on the job. So experiential learning, where you learn skills in your natural environment. So our focus on the 10% is our focus misplaced. So what we've been doing is try to take some of the learning, some of the jobs that people do, and use AR, VR, immersive technologies to work with the 70%. So I guess the question is, how can performance support tools and emerging technologies help bridging that learning and doing gap? So I'd like to share some case studies with you. Our aim, really, for this, our goal is to get it right first time. So if we can help people perform their tasks better first time when they're actually in their jobs, this is a big win. So we've got various things here. So we've got your tool or learning. So do you give expert support or do you give expert content? So often it will be a mix of both, but the expert support through tools often is the bit that's not really focused on quite so much. We've got available at point of application and in the workplace. Make it bite-sized, make it small. Don't overload people with content, with learning all in one go, but you can feed them gradually as they go along. So intelligent learning, decision-making learning, easy access, so easy for people to get hold of and access when they need it. Not using technology for the sake of it, and not just because you happen to have a particular device, but really looking at technology that's the best fit for the particular learning need. And practically, deliver it in practical ways. It might be that you need some sort of hands-free smart glasses or something superimposed on their field of view so that they can learn actually when they're in a different environment than the classroom or sat in front of a computer. Okay, so the focus for us is getting people to perform the job right the first time. Okay, so the first case study that we'd like to share with you was an augmented reality app that we created for Dell. So Dell technicians, they work on hundreds of laptop models, and their job is to look at these models, to assemble them, disassemble them, fix them, and there's a lot that they need to look at. So traditionally they would do that perhaps through manuals with some formal training up front, and looking at it through manuals or asking other people. So what they need to do with their step-by-step operating procedures. And it was a real challenge for them to retain this learning just because of the sheer volume of learning that they would need to go through on all of these different models. And they didn't have a lot of time for training, so in the workplace they had to get up to speed really quickly on these very complex laptops, and some of them went into the job with no training at all and just purely learned on the job. So we looked at this with them and we came up with a creative AR solution that had elements of game-based play in it, and a little chat bot that could help them as they go along and they could ask questions of it. So we'd just like to play you a video of this so you can have a look in a little bit more detail.
Technicians at Dell must know how to service over 100 different models of equipment. While various models may share common features, often the placement of the components may be very different from model to model. Even for the best of technicians, it can be a challenge to recall the correct sequence of steps in the teardown or diagnostic process for a specific model. Technicians often have to refer to manuals and contact remote experts at service centres for assistance when out in the field. SiyonaTech recognised the need for a just-in-time solution that technicians could use while they were out in the field at the point when they needed it as they worked on the equipment. Our easy-to-use and intuitive Augmented Reality Ar App provides technicians with a dynamic and interactive guide to assist them as they work on the equipment at the point of performance. Inspired by Pokemon Go, the SiyonaTech Augmented Reality Ar App has been designed to walk technicians through each step of the teardown process while they work on the actual equipment. Designed to run on tablets and smartphones, the app works by seamlessly superimposing information and graphics over real-world equipment. A technician who needs assistance in safely opening the access panel or laptop simply has to point the tablet or smartphone device at the laptop. A Dell, the augmented reality assistant, will appear over the real-world laptop and walk the technician through the process, one step at a time. Built on the unique SiyonaTech AR product architecture, the app works in 4 modes: learning, performance support, X-ray vision, and challenge. The technician can use the Let's Learn mode to learn how to safely open the access panel on the laptop, revealing various components within. At relevant points, the virtual reality assistant appears over each of the real-world components to explain their role and function. The app also provides overlays of 3D objects, such as this hard drive, to allow the user to take a closer look without having to remove it from its place inside the laptop. For specific questions related to a component or feature, the technician can work in the performance support mode to access detailed specs, information, and guidance. Additional information can be provided on the component in a variety of ways. For components that are difficult to access, the X-ray vision mode allows the user to see what's underneath the hood. A transparent 3D overlay shows exactly where in the laptop these components can be found. The app also offers a challenge mode for users to test their knowledge through timed tasks or challenges, to earn stars as badges. Technicians often experience a disconnect working on equipment based on information from static images in manuals. The Dell AR app seamlessly integrates learning and performance support with equipment in the real world, eliminating this disconnect. Having this just-in-time learning and support solution where and when it was needed most allowed Dell to make significant improvements to performance in the field. Having the learning and the performance support on top of the real equipment meant that there was no disconnect from the learning to the application.
Okay, so the big advantage of this was that that technicians could actually use this tool in their real environment, and it gave them a good opportunity to look under the hood, if you like, to take elements out, look at them, and investigate them without actually having to be taught this, look it up in a manual, or having to necessarily disassemble the machine themselves. So it was you could go directly to the problem, and the element of gamification was really well received by the technicians, because they wanted it to make essentially not a massively interesting subject a little bit more fun. So the really the really good information we got back from this was the results. So Dell assessed it to be approximately 35 to 40% increase in productivity for their technicians, actually being able to do the job while they were learning about it as well, instead of having that disconnect between the learning event and then having to apply the knowledge. The next case study we'd like to talk about is smart glasses. So this is an example that we created that shows you how you could use smart glass technology, for example, in a food safety compliance checks. So there's a huge range of applications where you can use smart glasses, but in this particular example, we show you the smart glasses in use. And the big advantage of these is that you can actually see what's happening when you're doing it. You can interact with the glasses, and you can actually send information back to a database direct. So there's no need to have reams of notes. You don't have to fill things in. You don't have to complete anything on a computer when you go back. You don't have to take photos with your smartphone and then upload them in any way. So it's very direct. So it's like to have a look at this now. I'll just start the video. Oops. Can you do it? Thank you. Okay, so this was an AR-based performance support. So it was essentially, in this application, it's a checklist engine, but there's a lot of different ways you could use it. For example, if you were, when you hire a car and you want to go around and have a look at all any damage that potentially has been done, the before and after. So employees can use this to directly send back their checklist, to directly send back photographs, whatever they need to do in that respect. So one of the other advantages is if it's a very physical task that you're doing, you can use your hands while you're using the smart glasses. And the smart glasses work with technology that tracks where you are and tracks where all the elements are that you're actually looking at on the screen. So I'll just move on to the next one. So the next one we wanted to talk about was intelligent support for air traffic. So we've worked quite a lot with NATS, who are air traffic control organisation, and we worked on this on a very large project. So this was part of the Oceanic project, and NATS control all of the airspace across the North Atlantic. So it's a very important and it's a very responsible job that they have. So this was part of a suite of learning interventions that involved AR, games, digital learning, that was working on a project that helped NATS save over £1 million in terms of training, where they were not having to use simulators, which were very expensive, and have people attend formal training sessions. So we wanted to introduce into this suite of learning products a performance support tool that helped people when they were actually in the air traffic control towers themselves. So the guys at air traffic control, they have a lot of very complex information thrown at them. It's a very immediate, a very reactive environment, and they have to be really sure about what they're doing because it's so important, and people's lives essentially are at stake. So they may have a pilot coming in, giving them a command or giving them a request or having an issue. And if we have a look here, so this is a little animation of some of the things that foreman support tool that we produced for them. So it contains a lot of information about very complex challenges that these guys might face every day, and it helps them drill down. So it will ask them questions and give them a very targeted instruction that they need to do in those circumstances. So it's really is a second opinion tool. So they should know, these guys should know this stuff. So they may have signals, they might have errors, they might have pilot issues that come into them. But although they should need this, this is a second opinion tool for them that gives them confidence and reassurance. So the guys do use this around NATs. They have it on their phones, or they have it up on iPads around the building as well, and around the air traffic control tower, so they can just quickly go and double check on things if they're not sure. So it's a tool that asks questions. You can drill down within it, and you can get direction from it as well. So, so it's an intelligent decision-making tool, and you can put any form of intelligence you want into it to make the logic work for you. It's really helped the guys there in terms of their job and being able to function and respond really quickly in their role, and it's given them that extra level of reassurance that they need, that they're doing the right thing in a really high-pressured and important decision-making environment. And one of the really big wins for NATS on this particular product, and also on the whole of the Oceanic project that we did with them, was that before they had classroom and simulation training, which does work and is never going to be taken away from them, but we introduced a number of job level aids that will help them at the point of need. So one big thing was it changed their learning culture, because NATS didn't really think about introducing digital into the way that they'd work. They're a very traditional organisation, and now the feedback that we've had is that it's really changed their view of how they can use technology to help their employees learn about specific things and also to respond to things at the point of need. Okay, so we've also created a virtual reality cabin fire demonstration. So this is something that could be used for training, or it could be used for refresher training as well. So it simulates a cabin fire within the toilet of an aircraft, and it takes the learner through the steps that they need to do in order to deal with the fire. So we've this could be available to people to refresh any time, because with aircraft training like this, you may be trained in a fuselage, for example, that's an actual real fuselage, and you'll go in and you'll have trainers there, and this is very expensive in terms of logistics and also for the simulation as well. And because of that, training in this kind of environment tends to be spaced in terms of perhaps years, when people will go back and refresh on this training in that simulated environment. So it make it quite difficult for some organisations. So this is the kind of thing that would be available anytime and anywhere. So they wouldn't need to travel and go to a specific site. So I'll just play you a video on it. Okay.
SiyonaTech is developing a range of affordable virtual reality, or VR, incident response experiences. They are intended to fill the gaps created by the practical sessions and the pure classroom presentation. The moment the learner puts their headset on, they are transported to a virtual world, a world you have created especially for them to learn from, experience, and most importantly, remember. This example takes the learner through the emergency procedures for fighting a fire in an aircraft cabin. But it could be any environment: building site, nuclear power station, oil refinery, chemical manufacturing site, confined spaces, even a spaceship. And it doesn't have to be a fire. It could be controlling any hazard in a workplace location. In fact, anywhere where prompt reactions and strict immediate action drills have to be demonstrated. For the cabin fire exercise, the action commences with the instructional phase. Learners are prompted and guided by audio instructions and can move around the cabin freely using their hand controllers to teleport. On suspicion of a fire, learners are required to carry out a search to confirm its presence and location. Identified here when they touch a hot part of the virtual aircraft structure with one of their hand controllers. Before they do anything else, learners are called upon to interact with their environment and talk to the other VR characters, demonstrating appropriate tone and language for each audience. Next, learners have to select the correct firefighting appliance. Then, when learners are instructed to carefully open the cubicle door, what they see is dependent on their own performance so far. Displaying the correct urgency and confidence will ensure the learners open the cubicle door to confront a small fire. With initial attempts, however, learners may be slower and lack confidence. So as with a real situation, there is a consequence. Any delay will allow the fire to grow and smoke to build up, even get out of control. If the cubicle is filled up with smoke, what should the learner do? Struggle through the smoke and attempt to find the fire, or close the door and go and get a smoke hood? Both options have an upside, but also a downside. They have to decide. They're in the box seat. No other tool allows trainers to challenge learners and control situations like VR, as this example illustrates. It is now time for them to demonstrate their extinguisher skills. If they fail to follow the audio instructions, such as aiming at the base of the fire or swaying from left to right, the fire will not extinguish. And if they fail to use the correct technique or take too long, there can only be one outcome. For more information on this product or any other of our VR, augmented reality, mixed reality or e-learning products, and to arrange a no-obligation VR, AR demonstration at our offices at Henley-on-Thames, please contact us using the details shown on the screen.
So the advantages of that kind of approach for refresher training is that you can repeat the exercise over and over, and it's also, you can make it as close as it needs to be to a real life situation. It gives an immersive and impactful experience, and we've been trialling some of this training with local academic institutions, and we've been using it as a trial point to understand how VR affects retention in learning. So we've spent probably almost about the last 9 months we've been going out to colleges and working with students to assess this, and we're writing up a paper that will be published later this year. But what was really interesting was that using this method of training for people on something that actually is repetition until you get this really important task right, because it was an immersive experience and they were able to walk around and move in a 3D environment, the average retention rate was 63% for the information that we were testing them on. That was over an elapsed time period of an average of 105 days. So that's a big difference to the 70% of information being forgotten within 48 hours from a lot of traditional training methods. We also had really good feedback from the students as well in terms of the experience for themselves, where they felt they wanted to do it. The programme encouraged them and drew them in, and they felt really involved. And there was also an element of competition as well, where students wanted to complete the tasks that were in there. It does vary in terms of the fires, because the system establishes how quickly you put out the fire to start with, and then it changes the nature of the actual fire. So there may be an example where you need to go and get the smoke hood first, and it changes the scenario slightly so that there's different levels that students work up through. Okay, so use cases for performance support. So there's a lot of different technologies that can be used. So you've got AR, VR, you've got mixed reality, you've got 360 video. They can be used for induction experiences, safety training, sales simulation. All of the reasons that you see there. AR is really good, where we saw the Dell example, for having something that's, for example, a piece of machinery that you can actually take apart and you can look inside and you can move around. And VR is really good to get that feeling of immersion in your environment. So it's multi-dimensional delivered learning. We expect them all to be blended with different learning techniques, and a lot of the training that we've been looking at here is really performance support, so stuff that you can do generally on, when you're working in your normal working environment. Okay, so bridging the learning-doing gap. I hope that's given you a little bit more of an idea of some of the things that some of the case studies that we've used in order to demonstrate that learning-doing gap has been bridged in your job and in your learning. So the companies that we've worked for, as you can see from some of those examples, they have had a direct impact on the company performance, and we've had some really good results. So if you want to speak to us any further about any augmented reality, virtual reality, digital learning, then come over and see us on stand 29 at SiyonaTech. Just want you to throw it out to the room. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. They're not really used as safety glasses necessarily, so there's a slight difference. So we've got smart glasses, and then we've also got the kind of AR apps that you would have on your tablet. So some of the Dell example was all via tablet, and that was the AR app that we'd use on there. The smart glasses that we used on the food safety checking one, they're not necessarily, they'll cover some protection, but they're not accredited safety kind of wear. They are, they wrap around your face, and they have tracking devices so that it tracks your head movement via infrared, so it can then replay back what you're seeing to the database. Does that explain? That's a really good question, Laura.
Hello. Hi. There are other options of glasses. So these ones used, the software on them can be put onto all different types of glasses. So there's some that can fit onto hard hats, so they can just sort of clip onto them, and they'll go over the top of glasses that are underneath them, larger safety glasses as well. But they're just different models of glasses that are available. It's okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, hi. Can you answer that, Laura? I don't know if you can hear him. Is it worth going down there?
Development. It very much depends on what the solution is, how big it is. As with digital learning, again, it depends on the scope of it, of how expensive it is. It usually is a little bit pricier for something, particularly VR or AR. But again, it kind of depends on the length of the solution. Usually you don't need something quite so long because it's much more immersive. So you can create a shorter experience that would cover a similar amount of content to a longer course.
There's different techniques you can use as well. So with the VR, so there we saw with the fire safety cabin, it was the Vive, and you've got your controllers. It's a three-dimensional environment that you will need to build. So you can go kind of high-end in that immersive. That then means also that you have to invest in your own environment, because people need quite a bit of space to move around in this. So you'd need to dedicate an area to it and buy that equipment, and also commission early. It's probably cheaper than most people think, but if you can go high end, but you can also move through. So for example, AR that you would use on your iPad or on your smartphone would be a cheaper option. And we also have a lot of VR solutions that we will do delivered by phone. So that might have an Oculus Rift headset, which again is going down into the hundreds of pounds to buy. or you can use cardboard goggles, and you can brand them really nicely as well. And that is that's a very cheap option depending on the scale that you want to go to. So something like you might consider a 360 video. So we've used 360 videos for sales training, where we film actors. For example, we did a Novartis pharmaceutical sales training app, where it plays on your phone, but you put it in your goggles, and you make choices while people are being played to. You can still look around the room. So that's a slightly different option as well. It's not quite so high end. So there's a whole scale of them, really. So yeah, I guess if you're thinking about them, then just come and talk to us, and we can give you a really good idea of if we know where your thinking's going. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, look, thanks very much for listening to us. And yeah, if you need us, we're at stand 29 that way. Thank you.